final presidential debate happened last night, and for the most part, the debate looked a lot more like a normal debate. Our political analyst, Dr. Brian Califano, joins us now to talk about the key takeaways from last night. Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Great to see you as always, Sarah.
So, Brian, just starting out, as I mentioned, that this debate was much more traditional. Do you think this final debate will change voters' minds at all?
Oh, boy, that's a great question. If I had the answer to that, I think I could be rich selling predictions. I mean, the question comes down to really, are there enough people in these key battleground states that will decide this election? And unfortunately, that does not include Missouri, according to all the polling. It ends up really including places like Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, those sorts of places. Are there enough folks who just had no idea how they were going to vote to make the debate matter? Because the other thing about this is that so many people, record numbers, have voted already. Almost 50 million people have already cast a ballot. And so, you're sort of in the process of having this debate while the voting process has been unfolding for weeks. So how the debate actually impacts voters who have yet to vote and who weren't already on one side or the other, you're talking about a really small sliver of people. And it's going to come down to, I think, the keystone state of Pennsylvania. Mark my words, I think 11 days from now, we're going to be looking intently at what's happening in Pennsylvania. If Pennsylvania ends up being essentially an easy win for Biden, I think that all but assures President Trump is not going to be reelected, because the president must win Pennsylvania in order to have a shot at being able to run the table against Biden where he has to do so. But having said all that, the debate last night, the performance on the part of the president, I mean, it was good. And I heard someone say, wouldn't it be great if the president acted like this in all of his public addresses and all of his public presentations? And I think the person was being a bit facetious, but I think there's some truth to that. The president really laid out his arguments as to why he thinks his policies are worthwhile and should be pursued for another 4 years. Joe Biden, less so. But Biden just had to not make any humongous mistakes, and he did okay in not stepping into a lot of those pitfalls. So I think really in the end, Trump did better than people expected, but I don't know that it was enough. I think it might be too little too late at this point, given all the early voting going on.
So, we mentioned that they talked a lot more about policy. Last night, Biden mentioned that he plans to transition from the oil industry. Do you think that comment will sway voters one way or another?
Well, it'll be a question as to what happens in places like Pennsylvania and to a certain extent Ohio. But people in Texas, I know people talk about Texas being in play and it might go for Biden and that sort of thing. I don't see that happening. But it was the kind of moment in a debate where I'm pretty sure Biden maybe wishes that he could have taken that back. But by the same token, maybe not, because if Biden is trying to essentially assure more liberal voters who want to go to renewables and they want to get there faster than it seems that the country's moving in that direction, then saying something like, yeah, I want to get rid of oil is a good thing to say, because it motivates people in those states who are already committed to you to make sure that they get out and vote. The whole model that we're talking about here is really based on the idea that you have to run as a more moderate candidate to be able to appeal to people in the middle, because that's how you win presidential elections. That used to be the model, Sarah, but we've become so polarized now that it's really a matter of turning out your side and making sure more people on your side turn out and vote than are people on the other side. And so you can look at Biden's view as, on oil as being a gaffe or as a gift to his more liberal supporters to motivate them to get out and make sure that they get their vote cast.
Okay, so, for the first time, they utilized a mute feature during this debate. Do you think that lack of crosstalk allowed for viewers to get a better idea of where the candidates stand on different topics?
I love that question, but I think it's wrapped up in the answer of the fact that the president just seemed really enamored with Kristen Welker last night. I mean, he just did. I mean, he was all like, can I finish my sentence? And is it okay if I say something now? And I mean, that had nothing to do with the mute button at all. And my concern was that it wouldn't have mattered about the microphone, because you turn the mic off and they're really mad, they'll just bellow. and the other mic will pick it up, or the director will go to the one who's still talking, and you'll get that kind of crosstalk no matter what happens. There was some of that last night to a certain extent. But really, I think a lot of this goes to the moderator. She deserves a lot of credit. And the president, for whatever reason, whether he likes her personally or, he's just still getting over COVID and he's got a different outlook, or he realized that he has to actually show up and deliver some policy specifics in a debate format, that whatever it was, he changed his tone last night, and I think it made a big difference. But I'm not sure it was the microphone muting. I really think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the president just happened to like the moderator a lot more than he seemed to like Chris Wallace.
Yeah, his demeanor definitely was different towards her. Just real quick, do you think there was a clear winner of this debate?
No, I think essentially President Trump made things a lot more competitive because he did a good job, but Joe Biden didn't really screw up. I know people are fixated on this whole Hunter Biden thing and what's going on with that, but in the end, I think that's going to end up being not what decides this race. It's going to come down to what people think the next 4 years are going to be like for the economy and for healthcare and for COVID, and they're going to make a decision as to which candidate they think is going to better their lives according to those issues, and they'll make a decision, if they haven't already, in terms of what they want to do. And we'll find out, hopefully, in 11 days. Hopefully it doesn't go on beyond that, figuring out who won this race.
One thing's for sure, we will find out. Brian, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
We'll have more Ozarks Tonight coming up after the break.